She was a female model from Ukraine who traveled thousands of miles to America to chase her dream. She thought she had found a wealthy boyfriend and even had a child with him. A happy life was supposed to begin. But unexpectedly, she was brutally murdered overnight. The killer's methods were incredibly bloody and utterly shocking. Its brutality was on par with the world-famous cold case, the Black Dahlia. This case also came to be known as the most brutal and vicious case in Los Angeles history. Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm DarkCaseX. So, what exactly happened back then? Why was the killer so incredibly cruel? Let's travel back in time to 2016 to understand this horrifying tragedy together. Los Angeles, this is a bustling metropolis in southwestern California and America's second largest city. It is California's commercial, financial, and cultural center. I'm sure everyone has a deep impression of spectacular Hollywood blockbusters. Well, Los Angeles is the home of Hollywood. Many legendary films started here and went on to the world stage, influencing generations of filmmakers. The story we're telling today took place in this bustling place known as the City of Angels. Iana Kasian was a 30-year-old model living in Los Angeles with deep-set eyes and long, dark hair. She was born on January 27, 1986, in Ukraine, into an ordinary family in the capital, Kyiv. Details about her childhood are unknown. It is only known that she was a very quiet and kind young girl. She was bright and clever from a young age, and her parents had high hopes for her, especially regarding her education, sparing no effort. Iana did not disappoint. She studied diligently and eventually earned a law degree, finding a stable job with the National Tax Authority. Additionally, during her student years, she developed a strong interest in fashion and the modeling industry. After all, Ukraine is famous for its beautiful women and international supermodels. This favorable environment allowed many young women to get exposure to it. With her good looks and figure, Iana, outside of her main job, was often active on the modeling stage. Although Ukraine is full of beautiful women and the competition is fierce, she still achieved some success and gradually made a name for herself on the stage. Logically, her career in Ukraine was successful, and her life was full of joy. Continuing to develop there would have been a good choice, but she wasn't satisfied with that. She always held a bigger dream in her heart, longing for a bigger stage and a more challenging life. And the destination for this dream was America. In 2014, 28-year-old Iana finally made up her mind to pursue the dream she had always held. She officially went to America to chase her dream. She went straight to the bustling city of Los Angeles. This was a paradise for entertainment, film, and cultural arts, perfect for developing her modeling career. The endless beaches and bright sunshine also made her want to stay. Iana told herself she had to stay here and build a family. With her years of runway experience, she quickly found a modeling job. Her career gradually got on track, although some say she only found a job as a translator. But regardless, she quickly established herself in Hollywood. For her, the only missing piece in her life's puzzle was a sweet romance. If she could successfully find her Prince Charming, then everything would be perfect. As they say, when fate comes knocking, no one can stop it. At a party, a man named Blake caught her attention. Blake was at the party wearing glasses, sitting in a corner, looking very nerdy and out of place with his surroundings. The spark of love between them ignited instantly. They quickly fell in love and became a couple and eventually got engaged. Iana was extremely satisfied with her boyfriend Blake, because not only was he from a wealthy family, he was also very talented and doted on her. Soon after, they had a lovely daughter, Diana. To take care of the child, Iana had her mother, Olga, travel thousands of miles to Los Angeles to help with the baby. So as not to interfere with the young couple's relationship, her mother specifically rented another apartment near their place. For Iana, having a fiancé who loved her deeply, a lovely daughter, a house, a car, and money, everything seemed so perfect. A sweet and happy life was just beginning. But who could have imagined that a nightmare would suddenly descend? On May 25, 2016, a sense of unease shrouded Olga's heart. She couldn't get in touch with her daughter, Iana. No answered calls. No replied texts. This was truly unusual and unsettling. She asked a friend to go with her to her daughter's residence, an apartment building on Holloway Drive in West Hollywood. In the garage, she saw her daughter's car, but no matter how hard she knocked, there was no answer. From downstairs, the mother looked up through the balcony window and could vaguely see someone inside. It looked like Blake. But when she called out for him to open the door, he ignored her and simply closed the window. In desperation, the mother had no choice but to call the police. 2 officers from the Los Angeles Police Department arrived at the scene. After repeatedly knocking and hearing no movement inside, they stated they couldn't enter without cause. They just found the property manager and got Blake's phone number. But the call went straight to voicemail, unanswered. This police call ended without resolution. The mother was both anxious and heartbroken. She anxiously texted her daughter, "My dear daughter, are you alive? I went to the apartment to find you, but no one opened the door. Please answer me. I know he's holding you there against your will. I've already called the police." Still waiting for a reply from her daughter, the mother chose to call the police again. This time, the officers who arrived knocked, and still, there was no response. They realized the gravity of the situation. The investigating officer discovered that someone was indeed inside the apartment because Iana's phone had been used at 1:48 a.m. on the 25th and 3 a.m. on the 26th to order food delivery online. Hallway surveillance also captured the delivery being picked up by someone from inside. This was very strange. It was clearly someone inside the apartment, so why did the police knock several times? With no answer, phone calls also went unanswered. The neighbors also stated they hadn't seen anyone enter or leave for 2 days. Based on the clues provided by the mother, Olga, the police suspected that Blake had done something to Iana inside the apartment. A terrible thing. With no time to waste, the police quickly got a spare key from the management. But when they tried to open the door, they found it was deadbolted from the inside. It was impossible to open normally from the outside. The officers couldn't worry about anything else and decided to force entry. After violently kicking the door open, they saw that the inside was pitch black. The officers entered cautiously. After a search of the living room, dining room, kitchen, and balcony, they found nothing. Now only 2 rooms were left. When trying to open the guest room, the officers found the door was blocked by a mattress. It was clear someone was deliberately preventing entry. But this didn't stop the police. After pushing the guest room door open, they found no one inside, but they saw some bloodstains on the headboard. This made the police realize something terrible had happened. They rushed to the master bedroom. The door was also locked from the inside. An officer kicked the door open, but it was blocked by a mattress and other furniture. They couldn't get in. The officer quickly shouted, "I know someone's in there. Come out now. We are the police." Then, a man's low voice came from inside the room. "I'm not coming out. You'll just attack me if I'm out." The officers immediately understood the speaker was Blake. If they forced their way in, he might become desperate and do something crazy. So they didn't dare act rashly and began to communicate with him in a friendly manner. An officer said, "We're just here to find Iana. There's nothing else. You can relax." Blake replied that his girlfriend was sick and was in a nearby hospital. He even provided a room number. Of course, the police didn't believe his nonsense, but the problem now was that Blake refused to come out and refused to communicate. For Iana's safety, the police didn't dare to force their way in. The 2 sides were at a stalemate. At this point, the negotiation experts we often see in movies and TV shows came in handy. Except this time, the negotiator wasn't an expert brought in by the police, but Blake's friend and accountant, Green. After some friendly conversation with Green, Blake finally came out of the room on his own. At that time, he was only wearing a pair of white boxer briefs. He looked completely drained of energy. He had scratches and bruises on his left cheek, numerous defensive wounds on his arms, and bite marks on his lower left jaw and left arm. He had clearly been in a fight. The police first took him into custody and then entered the room to search. Just as they stepped into the room, an officer screamed, "She's there!" Lying on the bed, the officer was talking about Iana. She was motionless, long since passed away. Upon examination, the medical examiner discovered an extremely disturbing and gruesome scene. Iana's body had almost no color left. She had been completely drained of blood. 80% of her scalp had been removed. 1 ear was missing. I don't want to describe the rest. In short, The injuries to her head were unbearable to look at. The cause of death was exsanguination from torn arteries and veins due to severe head trauma. She had been deceased for at least 10 hours. The medical examiner believed that, after the initial assault, she had suffered in agony for 6 to 8 hours, during which she endured horrific torture. The level of cruelty was on par with the sensational case of the Black Dahlia. Just thinking about it is suffocating. The medical examiner even stated, "In my decades of practice, I have never seen anything like this. I doubt any forensic pathologist, domestically or abroad, has encountered it. This is extremely vicious and rare." The police also found a large amount of evidence in the apartment. For example, on the mattress, headboard, carpet, and towels and curtains, blood residue was found. The bathtub in the master bathroom had blood stains and hair. The trash can contained a blood-soaked razor and hair. All this indicated that the apartment was the primary crime scene. Moreover, from the limited amount of blood at the scene, it was clear the room had been carefully cleaned. Using luminol spray, the police found a large amount of blood residue on the carpet, by the bed, in the master bedroom, and in the bathroom. From the trajectory of the bloodstains and the fact that Iana's body was nearly devoid of blood, the police believed she was dragged from the bedroom to the bathroom tub, and then her blood was drained. Police also found in a public trash bin, outside the building, 11 trash bags. Each bag was filled with numerous blood-soaked towels and bedding. On one of the bed sheets, there was a clear, bloody handprint, and even an ear, and other human tissue. After DNA testing, all the blood stains and human tissue belonged to Iana. As for the perpetrator of such a horrific crime, it was undoubtedly her boyfriend Blake. Although he had showered afterward and cleaned his body, the bite marks on his body and the skin tissue under his fingernails also came from Iana. Under Iana's fingernails, there was also his tissue. The bloody right handprint on the sheet had a shortened little finger. Coincidentally, Blake's right little finger was also partially missing. Combined with numerous other clues, Blake's guilt was undeniable. So why would he be so cruel and do such a vicious thing to his girlfriend? Blake's full name is Blake Libel. He was born in 1981 in Ontario, Canada. He was no ordinary person. His father, Lorne, was a Canadian real estate tycoon. His real estate company was once one of the wealthiest developers in Canada. In addition, he was a former sailor who competed in the Olympics and was inducted into the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. His mother, Eleanor, came from a very wealthy family that founded a famous plastic film company with business all over the world. So Blake was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, with endless money to spend. But wealthy families also have their share of troubles. When Blake was still a child, his parents had a conflict and separated. Afterward, Blake lived with his mother, while his older brother, Cody, lived with his father. Perhaps due to this distance, he and his father never got along. After graduating from college in 2004, Blake moved to Los Angeles. Although he could get a substantial allowance from his family and live comfortably without working, he still planned to do something on his own. The film industry in Los Angeles is very developed, so he decided to start there. Fortunately, he wasn't completely without skills, and he had been interested in video games and comics since childhood, and had studied related subjects in school. In 2008, Blake was involved in producing an animated series, Spaceballs. In 2009, he directed a comedy film, Bald. In 2010, he published a dark graphic novel, Syndrome. It can be said that in his years in Hollywood, Blake was not idle at all. His career was developing successfully, becoming an up-and-coming director and novelist. Of course, he wasn't idle in his love life either. In 2006, he met model Amanda. Amanda was described by friends as a party girl because she was constantly active at various Hollywood parties. It just so happened that one time she met Blake at the same party. Blake was a bit of a strange person, though he liked to have fun. At parties, he acted like a naive, simple boy. It was precisely for this reason that Amanda found him very special and fell for him. The two quickly became a couple. Their friends, of course, were not optimistic about their relationship. After all, one loved attending various parties, while the other preferred staying at home. They were clearly not a match. In 2011, Amanda became pregnant. The two finally made it official and got married. Later, the birth of their child brought some joy to the small family. However, the personality differences that were once ignored were magnified by the trivialities of daily life. The two often argued due to their incompatible personalities. Gradually, both realized that perhaps their friends' concerns were justified. Perhaps they shouldn't have been together in the first place. Eventually, they separated, but were not yet divorced. In the same year, Blake's mother unfortunately passed away from cancer, leaving an inheritance worth 12 million Canadian dollars. Blake thought he would receive the bulk of his mother's inheritance, but in the final will, he only received several million Canadian dollars. Most of the money went to his father and brother. This left him very confused. He even suspected his father had altered the will and raised questions about it. But ultimately, it came to nothing. From then on, he hated his father with a passion. The two were like enemies. It was during this period that he met Iana from Ukraine. Their relationship developed rapidly. Blake deliberately concealed the fact that he was married. After she found out, he used the excuse that he was in the process of divorcing his wife to smooth things over. His desire for a divorce was indeed true. In July 2015, even though Amanda was pregnant again and about to give birth, Blake still went through with the divorce proceedings and moved out of the house. In August, Iana also became pregnant. It has to be said, the timing was incredibly tight. Not a moment was wasted. Subsequently, Iana moved into Blake's apartment in West Hollywood to rest and prepare for childbirth. She was very happy with this relationship. After all, her boyfriend Blake was perfect, raised from a wealthy family, and deeply in love with her. Buying her a Mercedes, a diamond ring, and a house. Plus, they had a child together. The future looked incredibly bright. She had realized her dream of getting married and having children in America. In April 2016, Iana had her mother Olga travel thousands of miles from Ukraine to Los Angeles to help take care of the baby. On May 3rd, their daughter Diana was born. To give the young couple enough private space, Olga rented an apartment near her daughter's residence, specifically to care for the child. Originally, everything was perfect, but who could have predicted that just 2 weeks later, Iana would call the police, saying Blake had tried to force himself on her, and she filed a complaint against him. At first glance, this seems to be the source of their conflict, but the police believed this was hardly enough to drive him to murder. Moreover, Blake's friends all said he had no prior criminal record. With a prominent family background and a large inheritance, he had no reason to ruin his future. Furthermore, after the incident, Blake consistently refused to plead guilty and maintained his innocence. He said he was innocent, wrongfully accused, and even insisted that science would prove his innocence. But all the evidence at the crime scene indicated that he was the killer, without a doubt. So what hidden truth lay behind all this? After extensive investigation and interviews, especially based on the conversations Iana had with her mother before her death, the police uncovered a hidden side of Blake. He was far from the nice guy his friends described. In fact, both he and his brother Cody were chronic gamblers. Cody played for higher stakes, a professional gambler, so to speak, sometimes winning or losing up to $1 million in a single game. There's a golden rule about gambling: the house always wins. Cody was no exception. He eventually racked up huge debts. Because of these debts, Cody angered some people he shouldn't have. Blake had even worried that his brother would bring disaster upon his own family. Besides gambling, Blake was also addicted to marijuana and other illegal substances. He would often fly into a rage at his ex-wife and girlfriend, and then, with a strange look, beg for forgiveness. Especially in the later stages of Iana's pregnancy, the relationship grew increasingly tense. This was one of the reasons Iana asked her mother to come and help with the baby, because she valued this relationship highly. She hoped that by spending intimate time alone together, they could mend the rift between them. But clearly, this plan did not work. Just days after their daughter Diana was born, Blake's mood deteriorated sharply. He became extremely irritable. He would often draw all the curtains, and then stay in the apartment day and night, using illegal drugs, filling the room with smoke. He showed no concern for his daughter, disliked her, and even hated her. He hated that his daughter had taken almost all of his girlfriend's attention and time, leaving him neglected. He only cared about his own physical needs and desires. Just days after Iana gave birth, he tried to force himself on her. Blake even openly threatened Iana, "If you can't satisfy me, I will find other women." He said it, and he did it. The police discovered that while Iana was pregnant, Blake was juggling 3 women at the same time. Besides his ex-wife Amanda, there was also a woman named Valerie Bucaro. Bucaro stated that on her first date with Blake, she was sexually assaulted by him and contracted an STD as a result, so she took him to court. But incredibly, she not only forgave him later, but they also became secret lovers. To facilitate their affair, Blake set Bucaro up in another one of his properties. At the same time, he also maintained close contact with his ex-wife Amanda. Iana's mother, Olga, told the police that although she hadn't been in Los Angeles for long, after spending a few days with him, she realized that Blake had a strong need for control and was quite dangerous. Therefore, she asked her daughter to move in with her. But for some reason, her daughter always went back to Blake's side. Perhaps she truly was unwilling to let go of the relationship. Just 2 days before she was killed, Iana was shopping at the mall with her mother. But as soon as she received a text from Blake, she immediately became distracted and went to find him. No one expected that. After she left, she would completely lose contact and never return. The prosecution believed that Blake's motive for the crime stemmed from jealousy and anger towards the child. The birth of the child made him feel he had lost control over his girlfriend, which in turn led him to kill. But could he really be so insane as to give up his bright future and kill his girlfriend in a fit of rage? And the horrifyingly brutal method of the crime didn't seem like the work of a novice. It was more like the methods of a prolific serial killer. On this point, the police quickly found the answer. Remember earlier we mentioned that Blake was a novelist? In 2010, he published a dark graphic novel called Syndrome. This is a very bloody and evil novel. The cover shows a doll with its scalp missing. The novel begins with the line, "If you enjoy hurting people, then what would you do?" It ends with, "In the end, we all become monsters," accompanied by a picture of a large, blood-dripping hand. The chilling part is the details of Iana's murder are almost identical to the plot in the graphic novel. There's an illustration in the book of a woman lying on a bloody bed, her scalp completely removed. Additionally, a friend of Blake's revealed that he had been obsessed with crime themes since childhood, especially evil stories of murder. In Hollywood, whether in film or novels, he also created works in this direction. Perhaps another motive for his crime was to turn the ideas from his novel into reality. Blake had even prepared an escape plan. After the crime, he carefully cleaned the apartment and had $4,000 in cash and his passport hidden in his pants. If it weren't for the mother, Olga, promptly and repeatedly calling the police, he might have already fled to Canada. In June 2018, after a long investigation of nearly 2 years, this most horrific and talked about case in Hollywood finally went to trial. Incredibly, Blake's appearance in court was drastically different. He was much heavier, having gained a lot of weight. Apparently, during his time in custody awaiting trial, his life had been quite comfortable. He still maintained his innocence, just as he did when he was arrested. During the trial, he even tried to delay the proceedings by claiming mental illness. However, after a psychological evaluation, his mental state was found to be completely normal. Trial lasted for 6 days. The prosecution called a total of 14 witnesses and presented numerous pieces of evidence. Blake's crime was irrefutable. The prosecutor stated in court that the heinousness of Blake's actions and the extreme degree of violence he used were beyond words, was simply not something a human being could do. He had used his own novel, Syndrome, as a blueprint to plan this vicious murder. A pathologist also testified that this horrific murder case set a new precedent in terms of the brutality and horror of the injuries. On June 26th, the jury took only 3 hours to reach a unanimous guilty verdict. The judge announced that Blake's charges of first-degree murder, aggravated mayhem, and others were all sustained. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Upon hearing this result, Olga broke down in tears. She had waited for this moment for too long. She often cried, holding her daughter's picture, saying, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you in time." It is worth mentioning that, although Blake's family was prominent throughout the entire trial, Only his brother Cody appeared in court. The rest of his family was clearly extremely disappointed in him. The fate of little Diana also sparked heated debate. Although she is Blake's child and eligible to inherit his family's fortune, in the end, her maternal grandmother Olga was granted custody of the child. Although Iana, before her death, had hoped her daughter could grow up in America. With her passing and Olga's inability to live in the US, she ultimately had to take Diana back to their hometown in Ukraine. Later, in a civil lawsuit against Blake, the judge ruled that Blake had to pay Olga $41.6 million in compensation for the pain of losing her daughter and the cost of raising her granddaughter. However, Olga stated that she never received this compensation. Later, a rumor circulated that Blake's family chose to settle the matter with money and reached a settlement agreement with Olga. The specific amount is unknown. Finally, I want to say that Iana's tragedy might have been avoidable because her mother sensed something was wrong right away. Based on the medical examiner's estimated time of death, when Olga first called the police, Iana might have still been alive. Unfortunately, the police did not take it seriously enough, missing the best window for rescue. Another point, during Iana's struggle with Blake and the agonizing torture she endured, she must have made loud noises and screams. In later interviews, several neighbors stated they had heard a woman's screams, but none of them called the police. They chose to remain silent. This also reminds me of another case. I once covered the Singapore maid abuse case. Similarly, due to indifference, the maid lost her chance to be rescued and eventually died after suffering inhuman torture. It's truly regrettable. That's all for today's story. Please like, share, and subscribe to show your support. A simple click is a great encouragement to me. I'm DarkCaseX. See you next time.